Hello everyone, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to break down the regular list of analysis and mitigation strategies during the Garuda Indonesia financial crisis, which is a fascinating real-life case study, which me and my friend Thurayya, we will talk to you through each of the chapter that we have analyzed, and for each chapter, we're going to have different cases that we're going to talk about on each section. So yeah, let's dive in. Okay, so for the first part, I'm going to talk about the introduction. So for the Garuda Indonesia, as Indonesia national airline, it holds an important role both commercially and in serving in public. But however, in the last decade, Garuda faced a devastating financial storm, which is one of the worst global pandemic, and it created a lot of mounting debts that exceeded to about 142 trillion IDR rupiah, which owed to both local and also international creditors. Like for locals, there's like Mandiri, Bri, Beja. It was total amount of creditors, but it was not just external shock, ineffective or internal management, but it was just too much variety in aircraft types, and which skyrockets in the maintaining costs. And it also lapsed in corporate governance, created leaks and also inefficiency, which results in Garuda becoming technically insolvent through their obligation, which is far outstripped from their assets. And this crisis entangled Garuda with multiple legal frameworks. They had to negotiate with banks, defend themselves in bankruptcy court, and also they had to, face anti-monopoly security for ticket and also pricing. Saving Garuda's required a careful multi-faced legal and financial approach. And yeah, further in this video, we'll examine each of these aspects to learn how legal strategy and business resilience can go in hand. Okay, so now I'm going to be talking about the second part, which is the banking law analysis. So the core issue was Garuda massive debt to the government and private banks. They had to survive, right? And in order to survive, Garuda had to restructure this debt urgently, which means that they had to negotiate new payment timelines, they had to lower the interest rate, and even proportioning the debt to equity swaps, where banks would turn some of their loans into Garuda shares. But it was of course risky, right, for the banks, since being on shareholders exposes them to business risks, but it was preferable to letting Garuda collapse and writing off the debt entirely. So therefore, banks were cautious, only agreeing after Garuda presented credible business plans, which cuts unprofitable routes, simplifying the fleet and ensuring legal certainty and collateral. The restructuring immediately eased Garuda liquidity by converting debt into equity, which is Garuda's annual interest burden shrank, and also enabling them to focus recovery. But yet still, compliance with prudential banking laws and regular monitoring by the banks remain crucial. Even though with successful restructuring under banking law laid its foundation for Garuda's next legal challenge, which is to avoid bankruptcy as a whole.
Alright, Thurayya here. Let's talk about what really happened with Garuda Indonesian financial crisis in a simple way. So at one point, Garuda was in very serious trouble. They had a lot of debt, especially aircraft lessor and vendor, and many of those payments were already overdue. Legally speaking, this meant Garuda actually qualified for bankruptcy under Indonesian law. Because of this, several creditors filed for something called PKPU, or Penundaan Kewajiban Pembayaran Utang. In simple terms, PKPU is a legal process that give a company a chance to pause and reorganize its debt instead of going straight into bankruptcy. You can think of PKPU as a second change. During this process, Garuda submitted what's called a peace proposal or rencana perdamaian. In this proposal, they offered solutions like extending the payment period, lowering interest rate, and even converting some debt into company shares. The goal was to make the debt more manageable so the company could survive. And surprisingly, it worked. More than 95% of the creditors agreed to the plan, far above the minimum requirement under the law. Once the court approved it, Garuda officially avoided bankruptcy. This agreement gave Garuda more than 20 years to repay its debts, which gave the company much needed breathing space to recover and rebuild. But there's an important point here. This wasn't a pre-pass. If Garuda fails to follow the agreement in the future, bankruptcy could still happen immediately. So in short, PKPU became Garuda's lifeline. Instead of collapsing and being liquidated, they were given time to survive, restructure, and try again, with a very big responsibility on their shoulders.
Okay, so now, me and Thurayya, we're going to be talking about like the anti-monopoly law analysis. So, even as Garuda stabilized its financial position, it had to confront a different problem, which is accusation of fixed price and by the business competition with its supervisory commission, or KPPU.
Right. KPPU suspected Garuda and other airlines of engaging in cartel behavior, like fixing ticket and cargo prices, limiting consumer choice, and hurting the market. Under Indonesian competition law, these actions are strictly forbidden, no matter how dire a company's financial situation is.
Okay, so Garuda management also argued that they needed pricing adjustments, which is to cover operating costs. But still, the courts didn't accept this reasoning. The Supreme Court upheld KPPU decision saying that the economic hardship doesn't justify breaking the competition law.
As a result, Garuda had to become far more transparent, reporting their pricing structure to ensure no anti-competitive conduct. The case was a wake-up call, rewarding financial health must always respect consumer rights and fair business rules. Healthy competition, not monopolistic behavior, is the path to long-term survival.
Okay, so what lesson does Garuda in Indonesia's journey offer? So from here, we definitely successfully save a company hit by a crisis that requires more than just financial and engineering. It needs deep legal compliance and strong governance. Garuda's restructuring was just the first step. Sustainable recovery means always honoring the creditor agreements and upholding their fair competition.
Management must embrace good corporate governance, form independent compliance committees, and use transparent digital system to monitor progress. Ticket pricing should be algorithm-driven and clear to regulators. Garuda must invest in both digital transformation and employee competence, building a culture of integrity.
Okay, by following these principles, Garuda can not only restore itself financially, but also can reclaim its status as a world-class airline, serving Indonesia with integrity, efficiency, and also long-term stability.
That
Alright, so what have we learned from Garuda Indonesia's near-death experience and also remarkable survival story? So yeah, in this case, it is teaching us that no company is too big to fail, but with the right legal strategy, even the biggest one, it could be safe at one point. Garuda Indonesia faced the most perfect storm, which was 142 trillion rupiah in debt, but operational inefficiency, mismanagement, and global pandemic, they grounded their entire fleet. By all accounts, they should have been collapsed, but they didn't. So why? First, they used the banking law strategy, which is through debt restructuring and through debt to equity swaps. They could it con- Garuda could convince the creditors by saying that they could be alive, and by them breeding to be an airline, they could be stakeholders that could invest in Garuda recovery. And second of all, they leverage PKPU, the suspension of debt obligation, which means that instead of facing bankruptcy and liquidation, Garuda, they bought time. They present a credible peace plan, which won over 95% of creditors' approval, and they turn it into that sentence into a 20-year repayment plan. That's not luck. That's just brilliance. They're just so smart, and I think that Garuda they deserve the respect. They deserve the respect, even though they thought that they couldn't make it. But they embraced transparency in pricing and operation, which builds a strong profitability with a greater responsibility. And until to this day, Garuda is still flying, not because they're just lucky, but because they they were brave enough to face their legal obligation head on. And they restructured the debt with discipline, they negotiated in good faith, they accepted regular oversight. And yeah, from this case, it's not just about airlines, but it's about a business facing crisis, whether you're tech or you're just you know um, building resilience, earning stakeholder trust and creating sustainability success. So yeah, if you found this deep dive or video uh, valuable, then be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. And I'm pretty sure that Thurayya wants to say something as well. So yeah, I'm gonna end it here. So yeah, see you in the next video.
That wraps up our deep dive into Garuda Indonesia legal risk management during its financial crisis. If you found this analysis helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and let us know in the comments what other cases you'd like us to cover. Yeah, you better know where you're going.